Welcome back to the Coin Studio, where the smallest coins tell the biggest stories. In the next few minutes, I'm going to prove that the penny you've ignored your entire life could be worth more than your phone, your paycheck, or even your car. Somewhere out there is a 1-cent coin that shocked the auction world, climbed into six figures, and changed a collector's future overnight. Stay with me, follow the channel, and let's uncover how ordinary pocket change becomes extraordinary treasure. The 1958 Australian 1 penny is anything but ordinary. This small, round piece of bronze has climbed into the realm of legends, with top-tier examples reaching auction values as high as $172,000, transforming what was once everyday pocket change into one of the most celebrated modern rarities in Australian numismatics. This coin was born in a period of transformation. Australia in the late 1950s was stepping confidently into a new era, balancing its British heritage with a growing national identity. Decimalisation was only a few years away, and the familiar pre-decimal pennies were nearing the end of their long reign. That alone gives the 1958 penny a sense of finality, a quiet farewell to a system of money that had served Australians for generations. Struck at the Melbourne Mint, the 1958 penny carries the proud craftsmanship of the Royal Australian Mint's predecessor, a facility known for precision, durability, and traditional coining techniques. The obverse features the youthful portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Mary Gillick. Her profile is calm, elegant, and timeless, framed by the inscription Elizabeth II Australia 1958. It is a design that reflects a country still closely tied to the crown, yet beginning to define its own place on the world stage. Turn the coin over, and you are greeted by one of the most iconic designs in Australian coinage, the kangaroo, powerful and poised, bounding across the reverse. Designed by George Kruger Gray, this image is more than decorative, it is a national emblem, a declaration of identity stamped into bronze. Beneath the kangaroo rests the simple denomination 1 penny, grounding this majestic symbol in everyday life, where it once bought bread, newspapers, and sweets from corner shops across the country. At the time of its release, the 1958 penny was produced in substantial numbers, and for decades it circulated freely through the hands of millions. Children carried them to school tuck shops, shopkeepers scooped them from cash drawers, and families dropped them into jars on kitchen shelves. Because of this heavy circulation, most surviving examples today show significant wear. The kangaroo's fur is often smooth, the queen's portrait softened, and the once sharp lettering rounded by years of use. This widespread wear is precisely what makes the finest surviving examples so incredibly valuable. The true fame of the 1958 Australian penny lies not in the average coin, but in the extraordinary proof and specimen strikes that were produced in extremely limited numbers for presentation sets and archival purposes. These coins were never meant for circulation. They were struck multiple times with specially polished dies on carefully prepared planchets, resulting in mirror-like fields and razor-sharp design details that look almost unreal under bright light. For decades, many of these proof coins remained hidden in private collections, unknown to the broader market, quietly building their mystique. In everyday condition, a circulated 1958 penny might trade for just a few dollars, perhaps $1 to $5 depending on where an eye appeal. Even an uncirculated example, with traces of original luster, often sits in the modest range of $20 to $100. But the moment you step into the realm of certified proof or specimen quality, the story changes dramatically. High-grade proof examples, authenticated by professional grading services, have become some of the most hotly contested coins in Australian auctions. At major numismatic events, when a near-perfect proof 1958 penny appears under the auctioneer's hammer, the room changes. Collectors lean forward. Phones come out. Bidding paddles rise. These are not casual buyers, they are elite numismatists, institutions, and registry-set competitors who understand exactly how rare these coins are. In recent record-setting sales, top-tier examples graded at the very pinnacle of the scale have achieved prices approaching $172,000, cementing the 1958 penny's place among Australia's most valuable modern coins. What drives these astonishing figures is a combination of factors: extreme rarity in top condition, flawless surfaces, deep mirrored fields, and strong provenance. Coins with documented histories, especially those traced back to original mint sets or prominent collections, often command significant premiums. In this world, a tiny mark, a faint hairline, or a slight haze can mean the difference between a 5-figure and a 6-figure result. Perfection is not just desired, it is demanded. Adding another layer of intrigue is the ongoing mystery surrounding exactly how many proof 1958 pennies were produced. Official records are incomplete, and estimates vary, which fuels speculation and excitement. Every time a new example surfaces, it becomes an event, carefully studied, photographed, and debated within the numismatic community. Each discovery reshapes the known population and can influence the market overnight. Beyond the numbers and the auction headlines, the emotional pull of the 1958 Australian 1 penny is powerful. It represents the closing chapter of a monetary system that began in colonial times and ended just a few years later with the introduction of decimal currency in 1966. It is a bridge between the old world and the new, between imperial tradition and modern Australian identity. To hold a worn, circulated 1958 penny is to touch a piece of everyday history, a coin that once passed through countless lives and ordinary moments. To hold a flawless proof example is something else entirely. It is to hold a national treasure, a museum-quality artifact that captures a single year in perfect, shining detail, and when that perfect coin appears on the auction block, commanding bids that climb into the hundreds of thousands, it sends a powerful message through the collecting world. Even the smallest, simplest coin can become a legend. The 1958 Australian 1 penny stands as proof that history, rarity, and beauty can converge in the palm of your hand, turning a humble bronze disc into one of the most celebrated treasures in modern numismatics. Next up. The 1955 Australian 1 penny would rise from humble beginnings to become a 6-figure legend, with elite examples commanding auction values reaching $160,000. This is not just a story about money, it is a story about rarity, craftsmanship, and the extraordinary journey of an ordinary coin. The year 1955 places this penny at a fascinating point in Australian history. The nation was rebuilding and redefining itself in the post-war era, embracing modern industry while still holding tightly to its British roots. Pre-decimal currency remained a cornerstone of everyday transactions, and the penny was the workhorse of the economy, used for everything from tram fares to sweets at the corner shop. Millions of these coins passed through countless hands, living practical, unglamorous lives, a stark contrast to the spotlight they would one day command in prestigious auction halls. This penny was struck at the Melbourne Mint, a facility with a proud heritage dating back to the Gold Rush era. Known for its meticulous standards and traditional coining methods, the Melbourne Mint produced coins that were not only functional but also beautifully detailed. Each 1955 penny reflects that craftsmanship, even in worn examples where the design still speaks through softened lines and rounded edges. On the obverse, the coin bears the youthful effigy of Queen Elizabeth II, created by sculptor Mary Gillick. Her portrait captures a sense of optimism and calm, a fitting image for a country stepping confidently into a new chapter of its story. The surrounding inscription, Elizabeth II Australia 1955, frames the design, anchoring the coin firmly in its moment in time. This portrait would go on to appear on Australian coinage for many years, making early examples like the 1955 penny especially meaningful to collectors who trace the evolution of royal imagery across decades. Turn the coin over, and the iconic kangaroo dominates the reverse. Designed by George Kruger Gray, this powerful national symbol appears mid-bound, muscles tensed, tail extended, as if frozen in a moment of motion. Beneath it rests the simple denomination 1 penny, a humble label for a coin that would later defy all expectations. The balance between the grandeur of the kangaroo and the simplicity of the text captures the spirit of Australian coin design: proud, direct, and unmistakably national. At the time of issue, the 1955 penny was produced in large quantities for circulation, and for decades it lived an ordinary life. These coins clinked in purses, rattled in tills, and were dropped into savings tins on kitchen shelves across the country. Because of this heavy use, most examples today show clear signs of wear: smooth fur on the kangaroo, flattened hair detail on the Queen's portrait, and rounded lettering. These marks of everyday life are what make the truly pristine survivors so astonishingly rare. The extraordinary market value associated with the 1955 penny is tied not to the typical circulated coin, but to the ultra-rare proof and specimen strikes created in very limited numbers. These special coins were never meant for spending. They were carefully produced for presentation sets, archival collections, and official purposes, using polished dies and specially prepared blanks. The result was a coin with deep, reflective fields, razor-sharp design elements, and a level of visual perfection that feels almost unreal when compared to a worn pocket penny. For many years, these proof examples remained largely unknown outside of a small circle of dedicated collectors. As the Australian numismatic market matured and professional grading became more widespread, these hidden gems began to surface, each discovery sparking excitement and speculation. When a top-grade 1955 proof penny appears in a major auction, it is not just a lot number, it is an event. Collectors from around the world watch closely, knowing that opportunities to acquire such a coin are incredibly rare. In the everyday market, a circulated 1955 penny might fetch just a few dollars, often between $1 and $5, depending on condition. Even a strong uncirculated example may sit in the $20 to $100 range. But at the highest level, where perfection meets rarity, the numbers change dramatically. Certified proof examples in exceptional condition have reached auction results approaching $160,000, placing the 1955 penny among the most valuable modern coins in Australian history. What drives such astonishing prices is a powerful mix of factors: extreme scarcity in top condition, flawless surfaces, deep mirrored fields, and documented provenance. Coins with a clear history of ownership, especially those traced back to original mint sets or prominent collections, often command significant premiums. In this elite tier of collecting, even the smallest imperfection can mean the difference between a record-breaking result and a missed opportunity. Adding to the mystique is the lack of complete official records regarding the exact number of proof 1955 pennies produced. Estimates vary, and this uncertainty fuels ongoing debate and fascination within the collecting community. Every newly surfaced example reshapes the known population and can send ripples through the market, influencing demand and expectations overnight. Beyond the headlines and the hammer prices, the 1955 Australian 1 penny carries a deeper emotional weight. It represents a moment in time when Australia stood poised between tradition and transformation, still using the old pre-decimal system but moving steadily toward a more modern national identity. It is a tangible link between generations, a coin that grandparents once spent casually and that collectors now pursue with passion and reverence. To hold a worn 1955 penny is to touch a piece of everyday Australian life from a bygone era. To hold a flawless proof example is to hold a national treasure, a museum-quality artifact that captures a single year in perfect, shining detail. And when one of these extraordinary coins steps into the spotlight at a major auction, drawing bids that climb into the six-figure range, it delivers a powerful reminder to collectors everywhere: history does not always come in grand monuments or priceless paintings. Sometimes, it comes in the smallest form imaginable: a simple bronze penny, stamped with a kangaroo and a date, carrying a story worth far more than its weight in metal. Next up, the 1942 Australian 1 penny stands among the most celebrated and valuable modern coins of the nation, with extraordinary examples commanding auction values reaching $130,000. This coin was born in the shadow of World War II, and that context alone gives it a powerful emotional and historical weight. Australia, like much of the world, was fully engaged in the war effort. Resources were carefully managed, and industrial capacity was stretched to meet military demands. Despite this, the need for everyday currency never stopped. The penny continued to play its humble role, moving through markets, tramlines, and small shops, a quiet constant in a time of upheaval. Struck at the Melbourne Mint, the 1942 penny reflects the craftsmanship of an institution that had been producing Australian coinage since the 19th century. Even in wartime conditions, the quality of the dies and the clarity of the strike remained high. Each coin carries the marks of careful production, a testament to the importance of maintaining normal life, even when the world around it felt anything but normal. On the obverse, you find the dignified portrait of King George VI, facing left, designed by Thomas Humphrey Paget. His image is strong yet restrained, reflecting the gravity of a monarch leading his empire through one of the most challenging periods in its history. The inscription George of 6 DEGBROMNRX surrounds the portrait, a formal Latin declaration of his title as king. Beneath, the date 1942 grounds the coin firmly in one of the most pivotal years of the 20th century. The reverse presents a design that is unmistakably Australian, the powerful kangaroo, mid-leap, set against a simple, open field. Created by George Kruger Gray, this image captures both motion and strength, qualities that resonated deeply with a nation facing immense challenges. Below the kangaroo, the denomination 1 penny reminds us of the coin's modest role in everyday transactions. Even as history unfolded around it.at the time of issue, millions of 1942 pennies were produced and released into circulation. They were used for the most ordinary of purchases: a loaf of bread, a newspaper, a tram ride. These coins passed through the hands of factory workers, soldiers on leave, and families rationing their resources. Because of this heavy circulation, most surviving examples today show clear signs of wear. The kangaroo's fur is often smooth, the king's hair softened, and the once crisp lettering rounded by years of use. This widespread wear is what makes the finest surviving examples so astonishingly rare. The true source of the 1942 penny's fame lies in the extremely limited proof and specimen strikes produced during this wartime year. These special coins were never intended for circulation. They were struck on carefully prepared blanks using polished dies, often multiple times, to achieve mirror-like fields and razor-sharp details. In a year when resources were scarce and priorities were focused on the war, the production of such presentation quality coins was minimal, making these examples exceptionally rare today. For decades, many of these proof pennies remained hidden in private collections, passed quietly from one collector to another, their true significance known only to a small circle of enthusiasts. As the Australian numismatic market grew and professional grading became more widespread, these coins began to surface at major auctions, where their rarity and condition quickly attracted international attention. In the everyday market, a circulated 1942 penny typically trades for a modest amount, often between $1 and $10 depending on condition. Even a strong uncirculated example may fall within the $50 to $200 range. But when a top-grade proof example appears, especially one certified at the highest levels by a professional grading service, the atmosphere changes entirely. These coins become centerpieces of the auction, drawing bids from collectors, institutions, and registry-set competitors from around the world. At this elite-level, exceptional proof 1942 pennies have achieved auction results approaching $130,000, placing them among the most valuable modern Australian coins ever sold. These are not just purchases, they are acquisitions, often made by collectors seeking to complete world-class sets or secure a piece of wartime history preserved in perfect condition. What drives such extraordinary values is a combination of factors that rarely align: extreme rarity, flawless surfaces, deep mirrored fields, strong strike quality, and documented provenance. Coins with a known history, especially those traced back to original mint sets or prominent collections, often command significant premiums. In this world, even the smallest imperfection can mean the difference between a 5-figure and a 6-figure result. Adding to the mystique is the incomplete nature of official records regarding the exact number of proof 1942 pennies produced. Estimates vary, and this uncertainty fuels ongoing fascination within the numismatic community. Every time a new example surfaces, it becomes a subject of study, discussion, and sometimes debate, as collectors reassess the known population and the coin's place in the market. Beyond the auction headlines and record prices, the 1942 Australian 1 penny carries a deeper emotional resonance. It is a tangible link to a year when the world stood at a crossroads, when ordinary life continued under extraordinary circumstances. To hold one is to hold a small, silent witness to history, a coin that traveled through a nation during one of its most challenging chapters, and when a flawless proof example finally steps into the spotlight, commanding bids that climb into 6 figures, it delivers a powerful reminder: history does not always survive in grand monuments or famous artifacts. Sometimes, it survives in the simplest form of all: a small bronze penny, stamped with a kangaroo and a date, carrying the weight of an entire era in the palm of your hand. Next up, the 1956 Australian 1 penny is more than a piece of pre-decimal currency. It is a time capsule from a year of national pride, global attention, and extraordinary craftsmanship, a coin that, in its rarest and finest form, has stunned the numismatic world by reaching auction values as high as $160,000. The year 1956 holds a special place in Australian history. Melbourne hosted the Olympic Games, placing the nation on the world stage in a way it never had before. There was a sense of optimism in the air, a belief that Australia was stepping into a brighter, more confident era. Amid all this excitement, the humble penny continued its everyday journey, passed across shop counters, dropped into school lunch tins, and saved in glass jars on kitchen shelves. No one at the time could have imagined that a select few of these coins, struck with extraordinary care, would one day be treated as national treasures. This penny was produced at the historic Melbourne Mint, a facility with roots stretching back to the 19th century gold rushes. By the 1950s, the mint had perfected its techniques, balancing traditional craftsmanship with modern efficiency. Most 1956 pennies were struck for circulation, intended to serve a practical role in daily life. But alongside these everyday coins, a tiny number of special proof and specimen strikes were created, coins that were never meant to be spent, only admired. These were the seeds of the legend. On the obverse, the coin bears the graceful portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, sculpted by Mary Gillick. Her youthful profile reflects a sense of renewal and continuity, perfectly suited to a nation celebrating both its heritage and its future. The inscription Elizabeth II Australia 1956 curves around her image, clean and balanced, framing a design that feels both formal and warm. In high-grade examples, every strand of hair, every curve of the portrait, stands out with remarkable clarity. The reverse is pure Australia. The iconic kangaroo, designed by George Kruger Gray, appears mid-bound, powerful and alert, as if ready to leap off the coin itself. The open field around the animal gives the design a sense of space and freedom, while the simple words 1 penny below ground the image in the coin's humble purpose. It is a design that has become one of the most recognizable in the nation's numismatic history, instantly connecting the coin to Australia's identity. At the time of release, millions of 1956 pennies entered circulation. They were used in corner stores, on public transport, and at school canteens. They lived ordinary lives, exposed to weather, wear, and the constant friction of pockets and purses. As a result, most examples today show softened details, the kangaroo's fur smoothed, the queen's features gently rounded, the lettering worn down by decades of handling. This is exactly why the finest surviving examples feel almost unreal by comparison. The coins that drive six-figure auction results are not the well-worn survivors of daily commerce, but the ultra-rare proof and specimen coins that escaped circulation entirely. These were struck on specially prepared blanks using polished dies, often receiving multiple strikes to ensure flawless detail. The result is a coin with deep, mirror-like fields and frosted design elements that seem to float above the surface. Under bright light, these coins don't just shine, they glow. For many years, these special 1956 pennies were known only to a small circle of dedicated collectors. Some were tucked away in original mint sets, others passed quietly through private hands. As professional grading services began to certify and document them, the true scale of their rarity became clear. Population reports revealed just how few existed in top condition, and the market responded with intense competition. In everyday condition, a circulated 1956 penny might sell for a few dollars, perhaps $1 to $5, depending on wear and eye appeal. Even a strong uncirculated example often falls in the $20 to $100 range. But when a top-tier proof example, certified at the highest levels, appears in a major auction, the atmosphere changes instantly. Collectors lean forward, phones light up, and bidding accelerates. These moments are not about filling a hole in a collection, they are about securing a place in numismatic history. Exceptional 1956 proof pennies, with perfect surfaces, bold strikes, and documented provenance, have achieved auction prices approaching $160,000. These are coins pursued by elite collectors, museums, and registry-set competitors who understand that opportunities to acquire such a piece may come only once in a lifetime. What fuels these remarkable values is a rare alignment of qualities: extreme scarcity, historical significance, visual perfection, and strong collector demand. Provenance plays a powerful role as well. Coins traced back to original Olympic-era sets, prominent collections, or early numismatic archives often carry an added layer of prestige that pushes bidding even higher. There is also an element of mystery that surrounds the 1956 penny. Official records regarding the exact number of proof strikes are incomplete, leaving room for speculation and debate. Each time a new example surfaces, it becomes an event studied, photographed, and discussed across the collecting community, as enthusiasts reassess how many of these treasures truly exist. Beyond the record prices and auction drama, the emotional power of the 1956 Australian 1 penny lies in what it represents. It is a coin from a year when Australia stood proudly before the world, when optimism and national identity were on full display. It is a bridge between the old pre-decimal system and the modern era that would soon follow. To hold a worn 1956 penny is to touch the everyday life of that time, the small transactions, the simple moments, the quiet routines of a growing nation. To hold a flawless proof example is to hold something entirely different, a museum-quality artifact, a perfect snapshot of a single year, preserved in bronze and light, and when one of these extraordinary coins takes center stage at a major auction, drawing bids that climb into the six-figure range, it sends a powerful message through the world of collectors. Even the smallest piece of currency can become a legend. The 1956 Australian 1 penny stands as a shining reminder that history, artistry, and rarity can converge in the palm of your hand, turning a humble bronze coin into a treasure worthy of global attention. Next up, the 1945 Australian 1 penny. In its rarest and most pristine form, this unassuming piece of everyday currency has risen into the realm of legends, with extraordinary examples achieving auction values reaching $210,000, transforming a simple penny into one of the most celebrated treasures in Australian numismatics. This coin was born at a moment when Australia, like much of the world, stood on the threshold between war and peace. Factories that had been devoted to military production were beginning to shift back to civilian needs. Families were welcoming loved ones home. The economy was preparing for a new chapter of growth and rebuilding. In the midst of all this, the penny continued its quiet role, passing through hands at markets, train stations, and corner shops, a constant presence in a world that was rapidly changing. Struck at the historic Melbourne Mint, the 1945 penny reflects the skill and resilience of a facility that had maintained production through some of the most challenging years in modern history. Even during wartime, the mint upheld high standards of craftsmanship, ensuring that each coin carried clear designs and consistent quality. That dedication is part of what makes the finest surviving examples today feel almost unreal, like perfectly preserved echoes from a defining moment in time. On the obverse, the coin bears the portrait of King George VI, designed by Thomas Humphrey Paget. His image is calm, steady, and resolute, reflecting the gravity of a monarch who led his empire through years of global conflict. The surrounding Latin inscription, George of 6 Deg Bromnrex, formally declares his title, while the date 1945 below anchors the coin in a year that would be remembered for generations. In high-grade examples, every detail from the king's hair to the fine lines of the lettering stands out with remarkable clarity. The reverse is unmistakably Australian. The iconic kangaroo, designed by George Kruger Gray, appears mid-leap, muscles taut, tail extended, as if capturing the energy of a nation ready to move forward. The open field around the animal gives the design a sense of space and freedom, while the simple words 1 penny below ground the image and the coin's everyday purpose. It is a powerful contrast, a national symbol of strength and motion paired with a denomination that once represented the smallest unit of daily trade. At the time of issue, millions of 1945 pennies were struck for circulation. They paid for newspapers announcing the end of the war, sweets for children celebrating in the streets, and small necessities in a society eager to return to normal life. These coins lived hard, practical lives, and most surviving examples today show the marks of that journey. The kangaroo's fur is often smoothed, the king's features softened, and the lettering gently rounded by decades of handling. This widespread wear is exactly what makes the finest surviving coin so extraordinarily rare. The true source of the 1945 penny's legendary status lies in the exceptionally limited proof and specimen strikes produced in that year. These special coins were never intended for everyday use. They were struck on carefully prepared blanks with polished dies, often multiple times, to achieve deep, mirror-like fields and razor-sharp details. In a period when resources were still scarce and priorities were focused on rebuilding, only a tiny number of these presentation-quality coins were created, making them some of the rarest modern issues in Australian coinage. For decades, many of these proof pennies remained quietly tucked away in private collections, their significance known only to a small circle of dedicated enthusiasts. As professional grading services began to certify and document them, their true scarcity became clear. Population reports revealed just how few examples existed in top condition, and the market responded with intense demand and fierce competition. In the everyday market, a circulated 1945 penny typically sells for a modest amount, often between $1 and $10 depending on wear and eye appeal. Even a strong uncirculated example may fall within the $50 to $200 range. But when a top-tier proof or specimen example, certified at the highest levels, appears at a major auction, the atmosphere changes instantly. Collectors from around the world tune in, knowing that opportunities to acquire such a coin may come only once in a lifetime. At this elite level, exceptional 1945 proof pennies have achieved auction results approaching $210,000, placing them among the most valuable modern coins ever sold in Australia. These are not casual purchases, they are landmark acquisitions, often made by collectors building world-class sets or institutions seeking to preserve a tangible piece of post-war history. What drives such astonishing values is a rare combination of qualities that seldom align: extreme rarity, flawless surfaces, bold strikes, deep mirrored fields, and strong provenance. Coins with a documented history, especially those traced back to original mint sets, prominent collections, or early archival sources, often command significant premiums. In this realm, even the smallest imperfection can mean the difference between an extraordinary result and a record-breaking one. Adding to the mystique is the incomplete nature of official records regarding the exact number of proof 1945 pennies produced. Estimates vary, and this uncertainty fuels ongoing fascination within the numismatic community. Every time a new example surfaces, it becomes an event studied, photographed, and discussed as collectors reassess how many of these treasures truly exist. Beyond the auction headlines and six-figure hammer prices, the emotional power of the 1945 Australian one penny lies in what it represents. It is a coin from a year of relief, reflection, and renewal, a moment when the world turned away from conflict and toward the promise of peace. It is a small, silent witness to celebrations, reunions, and the first steps into a new era. To hold a worn 1945 penny is to touch the everyday life of that time, the simple transactions, the ordinary moments that continued even as history was being written. To hold a flawless proof example is to hold something entirely different, a museum-quality artifact, a perfect snapshot of a year that changed the world, preserved in bronze and light. And when one of these extraordinary coins takes center stage at a major auction, drawing bids that climb into the hundreds of thousands, it delivers a powerful reminder to collectors everywhere. History does not always live in grand monuments or famous documents. Sometimes, it lives in the smallest form imaginable: a single penny, stamped with a kangaroo and a date, carrying the weight of an entire era in the palm of your hand.